Section 10 of The Grizzly, Our Greatest Wild Animal. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Grizzly, Our Greatest Wild Animal by Enos A. Mills. Curiosity Wins. The grizzly bear has the most curiosity of any animal that I have watched. As curiosity arises from the desire to know, it appears that the superior mentality of the grizzly may be largely due to the alertness which curiosity sustains. Although the grizzly has learned the extreme danger of exposing himself near man, yet at times all his vigilant senses are temporarily hypnotized by curiosity. On rare occasions it betrays him into trouble, or lands a cub in a trap. In old bears, curiosity is accompanied with a keenness of observation, and a caution that enable him to satisfy his desire for information without exposure to danger. Often it enables him to anticipate a concealed danger, to penetrate the camouflage of something dangerous. Curiosity prevents oncoming events from being thrust on the curious. It is an effort to obtain advanced information instead of taking things as they come. In 1826 Drummond, the botanist, collected plants in the Rocky Mountains. In stopping to examine, to gather, and to press them, he was doing the unusual. He thus attracted the attention of numerous grizzlies, who even came close to watch him. They showed no inclination to attack. Bears are chock full of curiosity, and will sometimes forget to eat in trying to understand at once the new or the unusual. Lewis and Clark tell of a bear on a sandbar who showed interest in their boat as it passed. He raised himself on hind feet and looked after them, and then plunged into the river and swam toward the boat. This novel outfit should have attracted the attention of any living thing, and a curious grizzly must have been almost overcome with wonder. Yet the explorers erroneously assumed that this intense curiosity and consequent attempt for closer inspection was evidence of ferocity. During the first 50 years of the white man's contact with the grizzly, the bear frequently came close to a man or a camp for a better look. Most frontiersmen thought this near approach was ferocity in the bear. Often the bear was greeted with bullets, and in due time he learned to satisfy his curiosity by stealth instead of by direct approach. But inquisitive he still is. In crossing the mountains in northern New Mexico, I was overtaken by a Swede on his way to a lumber camp. He carried a pack, and a part of it was an accordion. We made camp that night near the head of a gulch. Across from us a treeless mountain rose 1,000 feet. After supper the Swede played on his accordion, and was soon lost in music. Pausing in my note-making to enjoy his contented expression, I saw an old grizzly watching us from across the mountain. Standing upon a boulder, he was looking over the tops of the spruce trees that thrust up out of the gulch. Through my field glasses he appeared even more lost in wonder at the music than the enthusiastic, emotional player. When the refrain died away, the grizzly climbed down off the boulder, and then, as another piece was begun, at once rose to remount, but instead stood with forepaws against the boulder, listening. By and by he started up the mountain, pausing every few steps to turn and listen. He either stood broadside, his head tilted sideways, or raised himself on tiptoe, fascinated. A loud, lively clashing close to one piece started him off on a gallop, but as soon as the music stopped the bear paused. He appeared puzzled, and fidgeted about while the player sat silent, listening to my description of the bear's movements. A soft and melodious piece was next played. The bear, as the first strain sounded on the evening air, seated himself on his haunches, facing us, and thus remained until the piece was finished. Then he climbed higher up the mountain, and, on reaching the skyline, walked lingering in the last rays of the sun, looking down on us now and then, as though wanting more music. For 2 or 3 hours I watched a number of water ouzels in the St. Vrain River. They often came within 3 or 4 feet of where I sat on the bank with my back against a large boulder. To avoid frightening them, I sat motionless, not turning even my head for an hour or more at a time. I was enjoying their actions, when suddenly I caught the distinct odor of a bear. While still motionless and wondering further about this new interest, I heard the faint crack of a stick behind me. Turning my head at this sound, I saw a grizzly raised on hind legs with forepaws resting on top of the boulder against which I was leaning. He looked at me with intense interest, all caution forgotten. His curiosity absolutely dominated. But my slight movement had aroused him. In 2 seconds from the time I turned, he was crashing off through the thicket and probably was condemning himself for being so curious. One Sunday afternoon, one of the men in a lumber camp rigged up a canvas hammock from the remnants of an old tent and suspended it between 2 trees. A pet grizzly who belonged at the camp watched him with curious interest while he worked. She observed him with still greater interest as he stretched himself out in it and began reading. When the man deserted the hammock, she walked up to it, struck it, pushed it back and forth with forepaws, and then began rather awkwardly to climb into it. She had almost succeeded when her weight upon the edge caused it to tip over and spill her on the ground. She leaped back surprised, then walked around the hammock eyeing it with great curiosity. But the second attempt at climbing into the hammock was successful, and she made a most comical and awkward sight stretched out in it flat upon her back. I came upon a grizzly on the heights above the timber line watching the progress of a forest fire. Squatted on his haunches like a dog, he was intently watching the fire front below. A deep roar at one place, high leaping flames at another, a vast smoke cloud at another caused him to turn toward each with rapt attention. He followed with eager eyes also the swiftly advancing cloud shadows as they mysteriously rushed forward over ridge and valley. So intent was he that none of his keen senses warned him of my presence, though I stood near for 2 or 3 minutes, watching him. When I called, he slowly turned his head. He stared at me in a half-dazed manner, then angrily showed his teeth. After another second, and he fled like a frightened rabbit. The actions of a fisherman were being followed with the closest attention by a grizzly when I came along the opposite side of a narrow canyon. The bear stood still for some minutes, all his faculties concentrated on the fisherman. Every cast of the fly was observed with the greatest interest. A dangling trout caused him much excitement. Possibly the wind, touched with man scent, finally warned him of danger. Anyway, he suddenly came to his senses, roused himself, and ran off. On one of my camping trips into the mountains, I carried a long yellow slicker. Wearing this one misty, half-snowy day, I was followed by a grizzly. Twice he evidently came close to me, although I did not see him. I scented him. When well upon a mountain during the afternoon, I crossed an open place in the woods where a breeze broke up the low drifting clouds. For a moment I beheld a much interested grizzly near by. He stood and stared at me with all caution forgotten in his curiosity about the long yellow coat. At dark I made camp at timberline and forgot about the bear. The slicker was hung over a pole against a cliff to drain and dry. I went to sleep about 11 o'clock, after writing up my notes and watching my camp fire. During the night the grizzly came boldly into camp, reared up, and slit the slicker. My shoes near by had not been noticed. The bacon and raisins swinging for a limb had not interested his keen nose. He was interested only in that slicker. This was a case where the grizzly's curiosity might have got him into trouble. So intent was he on seeing this one thing that for hours he had forgotten food hunting, and followed me. And then in order to have a closer examination of it, he must have waited near my camp 2 or 3 hours until I had lain down. Another time in the Yellowstone, while I was sleeping out, a big grizzly who had followed me all day came to give me closer inspection. I was awakened by his lightly clawing my bed. I opened my eyes and watched him for some seconds, and lay perfectly still while he sniffed me over. After several seconds of this, he appeared to have satisfied his curiosity and walked quietly away beneath the stars. As I was trying to flash the information with a looking-glass from Mount Lincoln to a prospector down in the valley one day, a grizzly became attracted by the flashes and lay down to watch them circle and shimmer here and there. In the San Juan Mountains, a prospector once lost a wheel from a rude cart which he was hauling up a steep, roadless slope. As the detached wheel went bounding down and across the bottom of the gulch, a grizzly hid an attitude of attention, and watched it. He became excited as it leaped, and rushed up the opposite slope. and when it rolled over he approached cautiously to see what manner of thing it might be. A grizzly sat down on his haunches to watch the uncertain movements of an umbrella which had taken advantage of a windstorm to desert a mountain-top artist. He observed the dishevelled umbrella with the greatest enjoyment as it danced across the moorland, and was particularly interested when a whirl sent it high into the air. Riding a lazy pony slowly, silently, along a trail in the San Juan Mountains, I came close upon a grizzly and 3 cubs. They aroused the deep emotional nature of my pony. He took on new and fiery life, and in his eagerness to reach a high mountain across the canyon, he forgot all about the topography, the canyon that lay deep between. While he was standing on one hind foot on the edge of the canyon, I leaped from the saddle. The old bear and cubs, forgetting all possible danger, while he was thus performing, stood up to watch the entire exhibition. A grizzly keeps an eye on nearby animals, often without appearing to do so. But if the animal is doing something new or unusual, he gives it his entire attention. 2 bears, side by side, are interested in the same thing, yet the individuality of each will show if you watch them a minute. Of course, all bears are not equally curious about the same thing, but seldom do I recall outwitting a bear, even when appealing to his curiosity, and never could I class him as stupid. Grizzlies in regions just invaded by white men appear to have put in much time trying to make out what these strange creatures were about. What man is doing is ever of first importance to the long-lived grizzly. His interest in his surroundings appears to be greater than that of the average person. At any rate, the grizzly shows better knowledge of the habits of human beings than people have of the habits of bears. His is not the curiosity of the idle. The grizzly is not prying into the affairs of others for mere pastime, but is concerned only so far as these affairs may benefit or harm him. His is the intelligent curiosity of a mind seeking facts. Most of the time he leads a solitary life. He rarely exchanges ideas or information with other bears. Most animals live in pairs or flocks, and, each gathering information for all, they divide sentinel duty. But single-handed, the grizzly must get the news, must scout for himself. He is ever on the watch, does nothing blindly, and he simply must understand. Any unusual occurrence arouses a grizzly's curiosity, and is to him a word to the wise. His success lies in constant alertness. He might well be likened to a frontiersman. He has that painstaking vigilance, that untiring energy, which seeks to discover whether this strange track, sound, or displacement is the camouflage which conceals the enemy, or if it be a clue which will lead to something of advantage. He at once endeavors to find out all that may be learned about it. The grizzly bear may have inherited a love for exploration. His ancestors were adventurers, coming to this continent from Asia. The natural attraction which the new and unusual has for him may generally be gratified in his curiosity about things at home. But we may readily imagine that the grizzly must sometimes become restless when there is nothing stirring nearby, when he finds no excitement in his home territory, and so wanders like an explorer to seek discoveries in far-off scenes. He is innately an adventurer. He seeks adventure and often finds it. His curiosity does not allow him to live in a rut, to live contentedly with old conditions. He is always learning. He keeps alive and growing. The grizzly bear simply cannot be understood, nor half understood, if his curiosity is not considered. Notice a grizzly bear pet. Observe a grizzly in a zoo. Watch both the cubs and the old grizzlies in the Yellowstone and Glacier National Parks. They walk about like superior animals, which they are. Those in parks ever notice any sudden movement, any new figure in the foreground, and detect any unusual noise that comes from far away behind the woods. The grizzly bear and the scout are masters of woodcraft through intensive observation. Behind the word curiosity, the grizzly bear has put a world of meaning. The wild grizzly shows a deeper feeling for the scenes, the sounds, and the movements around him than any other animal that I have watched. While thus interested, he sits on haunches like a dog. Again he stands on all fours. At other times he stands on hind feet, tiptoe, and on rare occasions he sits on his tail, with 4 paws against his breast, perhaps leaning against something. Once in a while he does give full attention while lying down. When looking at scenery and sunsets, his appearance is one of enjoyment. He appears to have feeling in the conscious presence of that which we call beautiful or glorious. I have seen a grizzly looking at a magnificent and many-colored sunset, completely absorbed. There was no fear at a flash of lightning or the roar and echoing roll of thunder. Once I saw a grizzly turn to stare at the course of a shooting star. Another gazed for seconds at a brilliant rainbow. Generally, the grizzly's attention to these demonstrations rose superior to commonplace curiosity. He looked long, he listened closely, he was absorbed, and he appeared to feel as he sat lost in wonder. Had he been a child with the power of speech, he certainly would have asked questions. Often his expression, his attitude, indicated that he was saying to himself, "What was that? What caused it? Where did that noise come from? What are those strange shadows running from? And how can they move without a sound?" End of section 10.